Hey neighbors, a handyman here with Initiative Coffee Company, along with all-around cool guy Jake Del Maro. We're talking about DDEX-02-03, the Drowned Tower today. Writer Mike Shea, editors Claire Hoffman, Chris Tulach, and Travis Woodall. This is a 4-hour mod for Tier 2 play, tuned for 5 6th level characters. Module kicks off with combat and defense of Cloak Salvar Bricks. This is followed by an investigation of the murder of Cloak Drayson 5-star. Finally, the party infiltrates a submerged Zentarim tower to recover the Orb of Living Water. Part 1, the rescue of Salvar Bricks. The adventure opens up with Salvar Bricks fighting off assailants and enlisting the party for aid. He was investigating the death of his rival Drayson 5-star. After investigating the assailants, the party finds the iconography of Umberlee. At the Tower of Arcane Might, Salvar tasks the party with uncovering the murderer of 5-star. Jake, what are we thinking here in part 1?
I like the fact that they got these Wild Wild West names. I'm not gonna lie, like Drayson 5-star,
right up there with Loveless and James West.
The beginning of this, the entrance to this mod is probably one of my favorites, just in general, because it's like the people are just walking down the street, minding their own business, and you just see like, in all honesty, just like a Wild West shootout, and the guy's like, "Help me! Haha! You've been bamboozled. My associates have come along," and it's literally it just shows up. This is like a Wild Wild West town. It's like high noon struck.
Yeah, I like the idea of the party not realizing they're associates and like being just as bluffed as the enemy here and being like, oh, I guess we are going to help. Other than that, the good thing about the last few mods in season 2, and this is an example of that, is like the action starts right away, right? Yeah. Like from the start, we're dealing with defending a person in combat. He is a cloak, so he's like a government official. The government is not necessarily uncorrupt in Mulemaster, but frankly, like it's neither are the cultists or most worshippers of Umberlee. So it's you got to pick your battles, I suppose. I guess there's a contingency that your players might opt not to fight off. The Umberleans.
Well, that's kind of part of where I had, when I was running this mod for our group, I had him flash a symbol of the cloaks, and I have a spellcaster in my party, and it's like, come on, and like they have to be associated at that point. And the other thing is, what I want to note, kind of even in the mod in general, this is the first major time when we had and of course it happens in the first tier 2. And tier 2 is chock full of info, but we have the misconception between an Umberlee follower and then the Cult of the Crushing Wave, and them having problems. Like they have very similar, I don't say ideals, but like Umberlee is to be respected, and she is a destruction-oriented person if you do not give her respect. And the Cult of the Crushing Wave is like, we're just gonna blow stuff up.
Yeah, I think the other thing to think about here with Umberlee is, like, going back to other, like, traditional pagan religions, like, you might have a patron deity, right? Like, you might be a worshiper of Palor, I don't know, whoever.
Yeah.
But, like, you still might show respect to Umberlee in this situation, right? Like, if you're going to go out on a ship, like, if you're going to go on a boat, you're going to throw some gold in the ocean to appease Umberlee.
Yeah.
Even if you don't like her as a deity, like, this is a situation where, like, you are beholden to the will of the gods.
Yeah, and this is also something when we were running it that I wanted to note. This is, like, one of the first times also that, like, it is clear that Umberlee is, like, around. Like, people are fearful of her because she will make a direct divine intervention to kill you.
Right.
And like, I think that is really neat to think about, because we don't really get to see, we're not going to have you, Miliki to show up and go like, I'm a unicorn. Right. Like, she doesn't do that that often. And it's like, this is a very direct, Umberlee's around. People are worried about her. She sends storms. She sends hurricanes your way in a lake. which is what the Moon Sea is. If anyone wants to know, it goes to 500 feet deep. It's a really big lake. But she sends storms on lakes at you because you didn't respect her.
Yeah.
She's that petty.
Yeah.
And I love it.
I guess the other thing to think about, this fight is a challenging fight.
Oh yeah,
it's a tough fight.
This is gonna kick people's teeth in because it's like Bandit Captain, 3 attacks, 4 thugs, pack tactics, multi attack, berserker. You know, you got advantage on your attacks. This is not a joke fight. Yeah, and it's nice because in these more detailed fights, or not even there's a very clear way that to run it. You know, use that to make this more difficult. I'd say more difficult, but
yeah, I always like when tactics are outlined in encounters.
Yeah, it's like this guy's gonna go for here, and it naturally splits the combat resources. So it's not like I'm gonna run and hit the barbarian.
Yeah, it eliminates the notion of like focusing your fire, right? Because you've got a lot of spellcasters that are defending themselves against a berserker, while the barbarians are out dealing with the bandit captain.
Like a bandit captain, 3 attacks on a wizard. Yeah. Max AC is like 20 with a shield, maybe. 3 attacks at a +5 to hit. Yeah, for 7 damage is gonna beat you up. And realistically, it's your first tier 2. Let's say this is your fresh tier 2 combat that they've ever had. Yeah, you pull away the berserker. You still have 4 thugs and a bandit captain.
It's still
not a joke.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a good fight. It's a fun fight. It really sets the mood. Be like, hey, we're no longer, screwing around here.
Yeah, I mean that is the nice thing about like this as an initial tier 2 mod is like very clearly the challenge has stepped up, right? Like very suddenly, like the mod isn't pulling its punches. Yeah. I know, like kind of as a general house rule, we get a lot less lenient on like characters remembering their abilities and stuff once people hit tier 2. Tier 2 is really where, like, at my
level
tables,
6 to me.
Yeah, level 6, I suppose. But that's really at my tables where I tell people, like, no, you didn't tell me you do that on your turn. You don't get to go back 3 people later and adjust that. You have to remember it for next time. Like, you need to know your abilities. You're in tier 2 now.
I did 10 more damage.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I don't even lie about it. I just tell people no. Because I
don't give them this look. I'm like...
Sure. I mean, I'm of the opinion that, like, you need to communicate the reason you're not doing things, right? And the reason is, like, you didn't know your character when you had your turn. Yeah. Like, that slows things down, and this is a group table, right? It's a group dynamic. Like, everybody's here. Like, your lack of preparation affects everybody. So
I think also to be noted here, to go along with that, if I had to prep, it's my first tier 2 mod I'm running, it's more difficult to run. I had to know that all these guys do X, Y, and Z. I had to deal with 3rd+ level spells. I agree with your point. If you are at my table and I had to spend more time on my combats and you're trying to also DM tip, tell people to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like tier 2 combat completely slows down because you have now the ability to cast fireball.
Yep.
Sure. Turn-to-turn stuff could be, an issue. But if you have if you have a table, like either tell them they're on deck, whatever it may be, it's not your responsibility. Maybe make somebody a table captain and be like, hey, you are up next in initiative. Sure. It takes a little bit of stress off you. Give that person inspiration. Just make sure that people are aware, because the most annoying thing in these tier 2 mods is I have to worry about 7 different tactics because now my guys are doing their own tactics in a lot more aggressive a fashion. And you're telling me now I got to worry about this other guy that doesn't know he's got a second attack?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the other thing there is, like, you can communicate to your players, like, have a couple of fallback options if you can't think of what you're going to do in a minute or so. Yeah. Default to I attack. For my tables, like, if I have to call your name 3 times and you're not responding, like, you took the dodge action, right? That's what you did this turn. Right? But even from a player's perspective, like, know enough about your character to know, like, oh, I'll take the attack action, or I'll cast this cantrip, or...
It's a respect thing, also, because I play clerics. I got to know what I'm doing. People sometimes are like, why didn't you heal me? I'm like, because there are better options here. But at the same time, when a fighter character is, rolls he pre-rolls his dice. That's another idea. But pre-rolling his dice, and he says, "Hey, 17 hit, 18 hit, no, yes, damage out." His turn was less than 30 seconds, and now you're waiting for a wizard, who leeway if it's the first time playing a tier 2.
Sure.
But into tier 2 combat, and they're on the board like checking squares. I don't really like it that way when people try to optimize fireballs if they're not evokers.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, like, they have however many other people are at the tables.
Exactly.
Turns
they're wasting time.
Right? Like, and that's the thing that, like, that's my biggest frustration at a table is when people are on their phones and things during combat because it's not their turn. Like, and then it gets to their turn and we all have to wait 10 minutes while that person, like, starts thinking about their action.
Oh my goodness. That's the fastest way at my table to get your turn skipped.
Yep.
Is, wait, what? This was more brought to you by the Initiative Coffee Company, things that annoy us at a table.
I think it's helpful, though. Like, I think tools on how to deal with that are important. You should telegraph to your players that they should have 2 fallback contingencies for their character. Like, I take the attack action, or I dodge, or I heal, or
cast
whatever.
A cantrip, whatever. If their spell's taking more than 5 minutes, you're casting a cantrip. Like, dude, if you need to get it together,
right.
Like, on the fly, if it's like 6 turns out, I'm like, no big deal. But you have an idea. As soon as your next turn goes, you should be consistently, like, the players should be consistently thinking about, oh, that changes X, Y, and Z. It shouldn't go from I'm casting Fireball to, I don't know what wizards do otherwise. I think that's all I do, honestly.
Yeah, and it also is indicative of a player that is invested in their character in meaningful ways, right? Like, if you are constantly thinking about what your character is setting up to do, and is like some characters, it takes them 3 rounds of combat to get on board, to get online, right? Like, if you are working towards something, you have a better understanding of your character. If you know what your character is going to do next, you have a better understanding of, like, the role-playing aspects of your character. Is he more focused on attack and defeating, or is he more focused on defending his companions and healing? Those are aspects that, like, matter and are really good role-playing aspects that your players should be exploring anyway, unless they're just here to huck dice.
Yeah. Even still, they should be, even if they are there to huck dice, they should at least be respectful of people's time. Other than that, back to the mod itself, it's nice because this is a place where combat's over. Salvar Bricks, he's a dude. But it also brings up something that has come up throughout the season, and that is the Brotherhood of Cloaks. Like, this is something that, if you have a consistent table, can be very interesting, because they can't be casting spells willy-nilly in Mulmaster.
Unless they join.
Unless they join. And even then, they have to be of rank. Yeah. So, like, that is an important factor. It's not like...
Specifically arcane casters, right? Like,
arcane casters, yeah.
Exempt, but...
So, like, this is a place where you can penalize your players for, like, doing stuff that's doing... And then, like, that could cause cloaks to show up and be like, what the heck is going on? Like, after this encounter, of course.
Sure.
But the other thing is there's neat faction, like sub-faction, that is the cloaks. Like, people can get spell scrolls made for them for that specific adventure. So, like, if you haven't already, lean into the Brotherhood of Cloak as something that can be a resource more than, like, a people that are just awful at their job. Lean into that. Otherwise, I don't think there's anything crazy. I did play up in my game. If you are, reading the books, you hear these horrible sounds of when you are with Salvar and he's reading the text. It's not good stuff you're hearing. Like, it's clearly causing problems. Other than that, you learn more about Umberlee. You learn a little bit more about I don't think there's that much. You learn about the Drowned Tower. Mr. 5-Star, the coolest man of Wild West. I don't think there's anything that's like that shoots out as like, whoa.
Sure.
Pretty straightforward. Just time could be, if the fight goes long, just make sure your players are just like, they're not asking questions, push it along.
Right.
Because there's a lot of exploration in this mod.
If they want.
Yeah. If it gets into a point where it's like been a couple minutes and no one's asked anything,
Sure.
either prompt something or like
Or
maybe
move
the
on.
guy just drops a little nugget of knowledge. Because people might not know who Umberlee is,
Mhm.
and that's perfectly reasonable to believe. But like, I would play up the suspense of like people need to figure out if it's Umberlee or the Crushing Wave.
Sure.
That is something that's important,
Yeah.
and that's really all I got
Sure.
for at least this part of the mod.
Part 2, the investigation of Drayson 5-star. Party can investigate 3 locations: the Shrine of Umberlee, Drayson's apartment, and the Rusty Chalk. In the Shrine of Umberlee, the party meets a priestess of Umberlee named Rida. As the cult of the Crushing Wave increases in popularity, followers of Umberlee are diminishing. Rida has a vested interest in seeing the cult eliminated and believes it has ties in the cloaks. At Drayson's apartment, it has been tossed but resembles that of a conspiracy theorist. The apartment has loose floorboards that hide a bundle of parchment and a blue idol. The notes are largely incomprehensible, but information can be gleaned about Drayson's captivity in the Drowned Tower by the cult of Crushing Wave. In the Rusty Chalk, the party can determine that Drayson had been recently frequenting the tavern, raving about the Crushing Wave. I guess, like, I'm a little bit weary of another investigation component in season 2.
Yeah.
It's not like overly long or drawn out or anything. It just seems like the 4th or 5th time this has come up.
Sure.
And other mods have done it better.
Yeah, I mean we can't compare it. I mean we can compare it, of course, but to like Will or whatever. But this one, I'm kind of okay with.
Sure, it's not terrible. It's
but
just,
like the reason,
it feels like.
Well, I feel like I think structurally I agree,
Mm-hmm.
but like thing to note in a lot of these tier 2s, because like you are now a little bit you're like more now knee deep into this now, knee deep, like waist deep into this, is that there's a lot of good knowledge here.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of like clear power struggles. Like even I said before, but like clear power struggles, and it's really neat. It's not like, oh, go deal with a kobold. This is like, hey, the gods are looking now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, of course they're not tier 3, tier 4, but like, hey, if this keeps up, things are gonna go really bad. Like you can help stop forest fires. Like that, it's like that kind of thing. You start small, but now you're at the point where you're now a little bit. You're in the minor leagues. You're in AAA.
Yeah.
Like, you
gods have scouts out for you.
Yeah, the gods are now looking for their draft picks.
Sure.
And I do like that the scene with Rida, Drayson's apartment. I made a very clear connection that it very much seemed like Anton's apartment from throwback at Flames of Kythorn. Like,
I guess the other thing to come up to talk about with Rida is she's actively trying to recruit the party to undermine Salazar. Like,
yes.
He has paid them to do a task and bring him a thing. She is offering to pay them more to bring her the thing instead.
Because and that's a wonderful idea, though. That's because it's like, hey, I think that that this guy is crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she has concerns about there being ties between the cult and the cloaks. It's this idea of like, what nefarious side do you want to be on, right? Like maybe neither.
The least bad.
And like the idea here, at least in my mind, is like a priestess of Umberlee. Like Umberlee is a status quo, so at least there's stability in continuing to work with Umberlee versus like this new cult that's really only interested in blowing up everything always. So I mean, there's a kind of a lawful versus chaotic bent here more than a good versus evil. Despite the fact that Umberlee is a chaotic deity, right? You know, like there's those kind of like layers to this story that are kind of interesting and worth exploring as a player and a DM, frankly.
Agreed.
Anything else with this investigation?
I like it because of the info it drops. I understand the structure gets kind of boring, but
yeah, I guess like in a vacuum, it's fine, right? Like if I hadn't played 4 other modules this season that were also investigations, I wouldn't have any issue with this, right? And that's unfortunately, like, there wasn't like a writing team meeting where they were like, all right, I'm going to do an investigation style component. You guys avoid this. That's just not how the writing works in Adventures League.
Well, I just think there's got to be careful here because in the regards that if we had them all as Will's mod that like was like this was awesome, it would in and of itself would become a very boring structure.
Sure. Yeah.
So like, I mean, it takes something special to make that.
Yep.
And
I guess this is like 3 locations, so it's not exhausting, right?
Yeah, and I think also the locations add value. It's not like it's like they do their thing separately, and it's not like, oh, I need to like you're gonna clearly go to the Cumberley. You're gonna go to his apartment. I think you can skip Rusty Chalk actually. Like, so if you're like, hey, I can just give this to you, you can just say pretty much, hey, this guy got stabbed in the liver because he was being a bad person. Like, cool. Read that in a newspaper clipping or something.
Yeah.
But you can skip that, and yeah, I don't think there's much to say more about this part.
Sure. Part 3, The Drowned Tower. The Drowned Tower features a dungeon crawl that the party may have clues about from Drayson's apartment. As the party navigates the 3-story tower, there are several avoidable encounters with black puddings and insect swarms, as well as noteworthy encounters with the Cult of the Crushing Wave. The party infiltrates or fights their way to the bottom of the tower, past Crushing Wave Reavers, Fathomers, and Elementals, until they reach the final encounter. At the altar at the bottom of the tower is a Crushing Wave priest, who immediately upon being defeated erupts into a watery hydra supported by water weirds. This is a lot. This could theoretically be a 4-hour mod in and of itself if your party wanted to like explore this more thoroughly.
Yeah.
You know, there's a bunch. It's broken down similar to the hard book dungeons, like room A, room B, like room 17, room 18, whatever. There's a lot of potential combats here. Some of them you can skip over.
Let innovation guide you. If certain alarms aren't triggered, just put a chair against the door and they can't get out. Yeah. Sure. Saves you 30 minutes. Yeah, I mean, up at the top level, there's like the black pudding or 2 black puddings that you can just close the door. You miss out on some loot, but like loot is very different from the time this mod was written. Yeah. The insect swarms, you could again close the door if you haven't just fallen through the ceiling. Yeah, you just not fall through the. You could be one of our guys, and the cleric can get fallen through the ceiling and have 4 to 6 swarms attack him. Yeah, I suppose it's important if your party has gone through the apartment, Drayson's apartment, and found the documents to like bring those notes to the attention of the party more than just like one passing mention. Let them know like he's outlined some problems to consider with the tower, and then if they don't, it's on them, right? Yeah. In terms of combats, you're introduced to Fathomers here. They're kind of a tier 2 staple in terms of this season and the hard book. Water weirds show up a couple of times. There's a water elemental, which is a pretty stiff encounter in and of itself. There's a cool watery hydra thing that erupts from the Crushing Wave Priest. All of this stuff is like totally on theme, right? Like none of this seems out of place. All of it is interesting. I like kind of this whole like dungeon scenario. It's on point. Yeah. And I will say that this is one of those times where the Hydra you're like, as a DM, you're like, yeah, I get to use a Hydra. Somebody casts a fire spell or, chill touch. And then you're like, oh, it was fun trying to use a Hydra. And it's really only effective 50 to 100 hit points. And then you don't get to make 87 attacks. Yeah. It's a critical flaw I do not like about Hydras, but that is a problem that I can bring up on a different time. I mean, I'm going to do it now. I don't like the fact that they're so easily stunted as monsters. I think that's regeneration on any monster, though, right? Like, they have the one thing that stops their regeneration and also spells that stop all regeneration. Trolls stinks. Have the same problems. As a CR8, getting stunted by a cantrip kind of stinks to me. Sure. Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, that might be an issue with a cantrip. It might be an issue with, like, general. It can get out of control. Sure. And I wish that the head component wasn't as okay, so this gets no more hit points back, but the heads come back. That's something that I would love to see, or maybe it's at a halved rate. But otherwise, this thing only has 5 attacks. Only it has a +8 to hit, and it's got 10 damage. It's gonna hit something. It's gonna hit hard. But like, you're effectively saying that it's got 125 hit points because every 25 damage he takes is a head. And I know it's in a single turn, but like, it goes real quick. And
yeah, I guess like the other thing that you could do as a DM is not describe it as a Hydra, but describe it as like some sort of watery monstrosity with many heads. I think once you say the word Hydra, people are looking for ways to stop regeneration.
Yeah.
But if you leave out the term Hydra and they just are kind of fighting this nebulous monster thing that happens to have some bite attacks, maybe it's a chimera, maybe it's whatever, you know, all of a sudden you take that pre-existing notion off the table where people might not necessarily be looking for like ways to stop regeneration until those heads come back, right? And then you get to do the cool thing that Hydra allows you to do anyway without like extending combat 91 rounds because like they can't do enough damage to a single head in a single turn.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. Anyway, after the battle, the party recovers the Orb of Living Water. They can return it either to Rida or Salvar. I suppose they could keep it for themselves. I don't know if there's a contingency written in. If they do, either
they can destroy, abandon, or keep the orb.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, okay.
Sure. If they want to hold on to it for like narrative purposes, cool, more power to them. They can be creative and come up with ways to make that useful. They forfeit most of the gold from this module if they do so. But that's kind of obviously up to them. And then they have the opportunity potentially to join the Cloaks. It's a story reward that comes up regularly throughout this season because of the limitations on spellcasting in Molemaster. But it's not, it shouldn't be looked over. It is a cool opportunity to like engage in another faction and do cool stuff and get rewarded for it. Anything else?
I like the mod.
Perfect. So there it is. DDEX-02-03 Drown Tower. Thank you so much for listening to some advice to streamline it and run it at your tables. Be a good neighbor. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Patreon, and MySpace. And from now until the next time, roll together.